ethnicity, gender. That's actually written into most of these policies. In most polls, like a big one back in 2016 from Gallup, show when you describe these policies, about half of Americans don't support affirmative action in higher education admissions. They'd rather solely rely on merits. Merits. Considering the current scandal of merits and test scores being changed up and all that, that brings up the question, is the admission system working for students, for institutions, for our country? I talked with Lance Izumi, the former chair of the California Community College's Board of Governors. Lance, a lot of us have heard about admissions coaches and things like that, but the allegations made in these indictments, I mean, this takes it to a whole new level of thinking money can buy just about anything.
No, absolutely right. I mean, we know that people will, send their children to, let's say, SAT preparatory courses and that sort of thing. And that's, very run of the mill. But to actually pay consultants to go through the trouble of, doctoring test scores, to bribe officials at colleges. I mean, that is like something that I think is an absolute shock to, virtually everybody, and especially the lengths to which some of these, very wealthy people did.
And all this stuff. Yeah. My understanding is that they were oftentimes using this kind of loophole that some teams in a lot of universities, sports teams, they have a few reserved positions that they can give to favored people or those that they say they've kind of selected, and that's what these kids were being shuttled into?
Well, there may be some positions on those teams. The trouble is that a lot of the students who were, part of this scheme, had no background at all in athletics.
Right.
And so therefore, even if there were reserve positions on these teams, you wouldn't want even those reserve positions to be given to people who had no real experience in the sport. But, I think that the fact that it was such a widespread scheme and not limited to just one college or one or two colleges, and that it spanned, so many elite institutions, I think is extremely troubling that, you're having this type of scandal, across, the upper reaches of American education.
When it comes to this case, I understand the intrigue with Lori Loughlin. We know her as Aunt Becky, loved her in the 90s. We know Felicity Huffman. But we've seen time and again that I think most parents will do anything to help their child. What I think is missing a lot of the attention and ire of the public are the allegations against the educators, the coaches, who have a real ethical and professional responsibility to all students, not just to their student.
Absolutely right. I mean, these people are employed by the universities to be objective people. I mean, coaches are supposed to be looking at the merits of their athletes, not to, whether they themselves are being enriched by putting certain people on their teams or not. And so, I think one of the things that has to be remembered is that for every person in this scheme who was admitted under illegal circumstances, there was a eligible, very meritocratic person who was kept out.
Right.
And that's the real problem.
Lance, final question here. The state of higher education right now, everybody wants the American dream. Part of that is if you can go to a Stanford, by God, you will go to a Stanford. Most of us can't do that, but we still want to reach our highest potential. I feel like people who don't go to the tip-top schools are still happy. They can still be successful. Are we still putting that within reach of people?
No, I think that, one of the problems is that, we have a system now where, people are, running in a race, but they're at staggered starts. And so that you really don't have equal opportunity for everybody. You just have to look at the lawsuit that's going up against Harvard University with regard to Asian American admissions. And so, when you have, certain groups of people who seem to be discriminated against because of, non-academic qualities such as race, then I think that you have a real problems in American education and, the undercutting the whole notion of equal opportunity in this country.